Karen ripped down their family flag. She had no idea their son was the state attorney. You never forget the sound of fabric tearing when it carries your family's history. It was a Tuesday, clear sky, gentle breeze, and I was watering the flower beds in front of our home on Hawthorne Lane when I saw her, Karen Beckman, clipboard in one hand, entitled Rage in the other. She didn't speak. She marched right up to our porch, unclipped the Pan-African flag we'd raised beside the American one, and yanked it down like it was garbage. I dropped the hose. Excuse me. She didn't flinch. You people can't fly that here. It's not community approved. My husband, David, stepped outside, eyes wide. That flag represents our family, he said. Our ancestors. Karen rolled her eyes. This is a family neighborhood. That kind of statement isn't welcome. That kind of statement, that's what she called our heritage. She held up her clipboard like a warrant and declared, according to HOA Code 14B, only flags of national or community significance are permitted. This one's not recognized. Then she tore it in half. Part 1. You'd think, after 37 years in this country, I would have stopped being surprised. But there I was, barefoot on my porch, watching a woman I'd never spoken more than 10 words to rip the Pan-African flag off our family's pole like she was doing the neighborhood a favor. It was the same flag my husband David hung every Juneteenth, every Black History Month, and every single Sunday since we'd moved into Hawthorne Lane. It wasn't some political statement to us. It was personal. It was a tribute to the grandparents who picked cotton and the mother who marched in Selma. It was ours. And Karen Beckman, blonde, crisp, HOA pin gleaming like a sheriff's badge, had it balled in her fist like trash. This isn't about race, she said, without a hint of irony. It's about decorum. I stepped between her and the flagpole, heart pounding. What you just did was vandalism, she scoffed. This is private property under HOA regulation. I am the HOA president. That flagpole is on our land. Not according to the guidelines, she snapped, holding up her clipboard. Page 6. Section 14B, only government-issued or HOA-approved flags are allowed on visible display. My husband came out behind me. He didn't say anything right away, just stared at the ripped cloth in her hand like she'd torn into his father's grave. You know what this flag stands for, he asked. Karen didn't blink. Division. That word, it hit harder than I expected. We weren't new to coded language. We'd lived in white neighborhoods before. We'd had people glance at our Christmas lights and ask if we were renting. We'd had neighbors whisper about the number of relatives visiting on the weekend. But this was direct. This was a woman deciding we didn't belong because our pride didn't match her picture of order. And she'd touched our family's symbol. I wanted to scream, but David reached for my hand. Let it go, he whispered. Just for now. Karen walked off without another word, flag still in hand. She didn't ask, didn't apologize, just clicked her heels down the driveway and got into her car, a spotless white Lexus with a "We Support Our Troops" magnet on the back bumper. David didn't speak until we were back inside. Then he said one quietly, she really doesn't know. Does she about Miles, I asked. He shook his head. About what she just woke up. Our son, Miles Bishop, was scheduled to visit that afternoon. We hadn't told Karen who he was, not that we had to. He didn't live here, but he grew up here, played football on the high school field, did mock trials at the community center, volunteered at the library. Now he was the youngest assistant state attorney in the region, 37, sharp suit, sharper mind, the type of man who knew how to sit in silence long enough for people to reveal their guilt. He was coming home for dinner, and now he'd be coming home to a hate crime. It didn't take long for the neighborhood to find out. Karen posted about the incident in the Willow Glen Community Forum, a private Facebook group we'd never been invited to join. Unfortunately, had to remove a non-compliant banner from a resident's property today. Let's all do our part to keep Hawthorne Lane beautiful, unified, and apolitical. That word again, apolitical. Like our family's identity was a campaign slogan. Like pride in our history was something to be filed under controversial because it made her uncomfortable. She didn't even mention our name. But the video leaked. Of course it did. Turns out one of the Sanders kids across the street had caught the whole thing on their Ring camera. Their parents, Danny and Mark, were newer to the neighborhood. Kind, quiet, and white. But when Danny saw the footage, she didn't hesitate. She sent it to us. Then she sent it to Miles. He called us within 10 minutes. "You okay?" he asked, voice flat with control. "We're fine," David said, "but we're angry. I'm on my way." Miles said, "Don't say a word to her. Not yet." The Lexus came back around 4:30 p.m. Karen stepped out with a glass of iced tea in hand, like she hadn't just committed public vandalism. She wore white slacks and a blue linen top. Calm, powerful, unbothered. But at 4:41 p.m., a black SUV pulled into our driveway. Miles stepped out, phone in one hand, briefcase in the other. Karen glanced over. She didn't recognize him. Not at first. Miles didn't say a word. He walked up the porch steps, kissed me on the cheek, shook David's hand, then turned around and scanned the street. Karen sipped her tea. I told Miles what happened. He didn't interrupt. He listened like he was in court already. Eyes on me, posture still. When I finished, I handed him the crumpled flag. He held it like it was sacred. Then he said, "She tore this." David nodded. "I want the footage," he said, "and I want a copy of that fake HOA policy." She waved around. I gave him the video from Danny, and David handed him a printed HOA rulebook we gotten in the mail, no letterhead. No signatures, just vague citations and arbitrary bullet points. None of it legally binding. Miles flipped through it once. "She's impersonating an active HOA, he said. "That's civil fraud." Karen approached around 5 p.m. She didn't look worried. She looked annoyed. "Angela," she said, smiling with her lips only, "I understand you're upset, but the rules are rules. I can't make exceptions for everyone who thinks they're special." Miles turned around slowly. "Good evening," he said. Karen tilted her head. "And you are Miles Bishop," he said. "State Attorney's Office." The color drained from her face. He held up his badge. Real, polished, gold. "And you are Karen Beckman." I'm the acting HOA president." "Acting?" he asked. "I mean, self-appointed." The neighborhood needed guidance. He pulled out his phone, tapped something. Then he said, "Do you know what the legal threshold is for impersonating an HOA in this county?" Karen blinked. Miles didn't. He read it aloud. "It is unlawful for any individual to present themselves as an officer of a homeowners association without a registered charter, elected authority, or majority vote of members. Penalty up to $10,000 or 6 months in jail." Karen opened her mouth, closed it. He took a step forward. "You ripped a cultural flag from private property and published a false justification under a fabricated authority. That's vandalism, defamation, and unauthorized code enforcement. And given the video footage, it's a civil rights violation." She looked down at the flag. He held it out to her. "This wasn't just fabric," he said. "This was your last mistake." Part 2. Miles didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. That's something you learn in courtrooms and war zones. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding all the power. And the moment Karen saw his badge, she started realizing she wasn't dealing with some angry homeowner. She was dealing with the law. She just didn't know how deep it would go. Karen tried to pivot. "I'm sure we can settle this neighbor to neighbor," she said with that strained little smile. "No need for any official involvement." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Oh, we're past neighborly. Miss Beckman." He opened his briefcase, inside a slim folder with the HOA's supposed bylaws. He'd already cross-referenced them with the county clerk's office on the drive over. There is no official HOA registered to Hawthorne Lane. Not in the county. Not in the state. Karen folded her arms. "We're self-managed. We've followed the same rules for years. Then why do your rules lack signatures, dates, voting records, or any traceable leadership structure?" he asked. Why are the payments from fines made out to a personal account listed under Karen B. Management Services? Her mouth opened. No words came out. By 6 Rio Wayermpunmemum. Half the neighborhood knew what happened. Danny had posted the footage to her Instagram account with a caption, "My neighbor's flag was torn down for non-compliance. Their son is the state attorney. Buckle up." Within an hour, it had over 11,000 views. The local community Facebook group exploded. Some people were furious. Others were frightened. A few mostly longtime supporters of Karen's HOA tried to defend her. "She's just trying to keep the neighborhood clean. It's not racist, it's just a rule." But the tide had turned, because for every excuse someone posted, another neighbor replied with their own story, the veteran whose POW/MIA flag was removed for causing anxiety. The Vietnamese couple told their lanterns were a fire hazard. The single mother fined $250 for excessive porch toys when her autistic son lined up Hot Wheels outside. Karen's order wasn't random. It was targeted. And now, she was being exposed. Miles stayed the night. He called his team back at the office and requested a preliminary inquiry into Karen's actions, not just for impersonating a legal body, but for civil code violations and hate-based vandalism. He also emailed 3 civil rights attorneys he trusted personally and asked them to evaluate the flag incident under federal grounds. We offered him dinner. He said he wasn't hungry. He was building a case. By Tuesday morning, letters were flying. Miles filed a cease and desist on Karen's unauthorized HOA operations. He demanded that she immediately halt all enforcement activity and provide financial records of any fees or fines she had collected from residents over the past 3 years. At the same time, he sent notice to the county prosecutor's office and the local news stations along with the ring footage. The first article came out that night, "Woman Tears Down Black Family's Heritage Flag in HOA Enforcement. State Attorney Steps in from There." It spread like fire. The press came hard. Channel 5, the Gazette, even a national journalist picked it up. Karen refused to speak to reporters. Instead, she doubled down. She emailed the neighborhood claiming she was being unfairly targeted by political forces and accused Miles of abusing his position to intimidate a citizen. But the truth was already out there. It was in the testimonies pouring in, the canceled checks, the screenshots, the receipts. Miles printed everything, color-coded it, and added each page to a growing binder titled The Beckman File. He wasn't just pursuing her. He was unraveling her. The Sanders family hosted an emergency community meeting that Thursday night. Their living room overflowed. Some folks sat on folding chairs. Others stood by the kitchen, murmuring nervously. Miles stood at the front. He didn't come to threaten. He came to educate. "This is not just a story about one flag," he said. "It's about who gets to decide what belongs and who belongs. It's about power being assumed, not earned, about fear being passed off as order." The room went quiet. Then David stood up. He told them about the first time we hung that flag, how he'd prayed over it, how he'd taught Miles to salute both the American and Pan-African flags every morning. "I never thought the thing that made us proud," he said, "would be treated like graffiti." There wasn't a dry eye in the room, but it wasn't just about feelings anymore. It was about law. Miles laid it out clearly. Karen's fake HOA had collected over $42,000 in fines over 4 years. None of it went to community maintenance. She had no legal authority to enforce or penalize anything. Multiple incidents, including the flag tearing, met the threshold for hate-based intimidation and malicious mischief. The neighbors voted unanimously to remove any support for Karen's guidelines. Several requested full audits of what they had paid and what threats she had made when they didn't comply. Even Karen's former allies didn't defend her now. Fear turned to fury. That night, someone tore down the fake Willow Glen HOA sign at the park entrance. Another resident spray-painted over the community compliance zone placard on the mail kiosk. No one was angry anymore. They were ready to rebuild. Karen was served her first official subpoena the next morning. When the process server handed her the envelope, she slammed the door in his face. But it was too late. The system she built one of fear, Fines and quiet discrimination was cracking, and everyone could hear it. Part 3. I used to think Karen was just petty, just another power-hungry woman with too much time and not enough empathy. But what Miles uncovered next proved she wasn't just cruel, she was calculated. The day after Karen was served her subpoena, our doorbell rang before 7 a.m. It wasn't press. It wasn't police. It was a man in his 60s, button-down shirt half-tucked, eyes heavy like he hadn't slept in days. His name was Tom Darlington. He lived 3 streets over, behind the cul-de-sac where most of Karen's supporters used to gather. "I heard what happened with the flag," he said, not meeting my eyes. I think you need to see something." He handed Miles a manila envelope and left without another word. Inside were copies of emails, bank statements, and property surveys. Some were stamped, some were just screenshots. All were connected to a group we'd never heard of before. Heritage Haven Homeowners Association, Interim Expansion Authority. Miles frowned. This isn't a real HOA either. He flipped through the papers and stopped on a page that made his jaw tighten. A map. It was a blueprint of our neighborhood. Hawthorne Lane included, but there were red outlines around several properties. Some homes were circled in green, ours circled in red and labeled high compliance risk. In the margin, someone had written Rezone Phase 3, target for removal or buyout. Miles looked up. She wasn't just enforcing fake rules. She was prepping this neighborhood for takeover. Tom called later that day. He told us everything. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was working with a small group of investors, mostly retired realtors, insurance brokers, and one shady developer based in Lubbock. Their scheme was simple: create a fake HOA or revive a long-defunct one. Use Karen to enforce regulations and push out non-compliant homeowners. Label those homes as code violations or low appeal. Force sales through fines, intimidation, and legal noise. Buy the homes below market value through shell companies. Flip or rent at premium prices after remodeling marketed to preferred families. The preferred families, white, upper income, often handpicked from within their investment circle. It wasn't just discrimination. It was gentrification by force, and our family was next on their list. Miles brought the documents to his office and had them authenticated. Several were traced to a printer registered to Karen's home. Others linked to her co-conspirator Bradley Nance, a local real estate consultant who'd quietly acquired 4 homes in the area under the name Community Renewal Holdings. It wasn't just a scam, it was an engineered displacement plan. Karen's fake fines weren't just harassment. They were tactics to financially choke families into leaving. And the moment she saw a black family with pride, with visibility, with power, she panicked. We were supposed to be quiet, grateful, invisible. Instead, we flew a flag, and Miles flew straight into her trap with a badge. The deeper Miles dug, the darker it got. Emails revealed Karen was paid a monthly consulting stipend by Community Renewal Holdings, $2,000 per month labeled as HOA enforcement services. She had a quota. She even kept a spreadsheet titled Compliance Funnel with tabs labeled Resistant. Targeted outreach, flagged for resale. Dozens of homes were listed. Elderly residents, immigrants, interracial families. Anyone who didn't fit the aesthetic vision of their fictional HOA. Miles printed every page. He added it all to the Beckman file. The next town meeting was standing room only. But this time, Miles wasn't just presenting his case. He was holding a projector remote. The living room went dark. On screen, he displayed one of Karen's own emails. "The bishops are going to be a problem. The sooner we get that flag down, the better. Push hard on compliance notices. Make the home look like a disruption." Gasps. Next slide the resale map. Next the wire transfers to Karen. Finally, he ended with the original footage. Karen tearing down our flag in daylight. Unapologetic. Silence followed. Then the room erupted, not with confusion or fear, but rage. I paid her over $700 in fees. Someone shouted. "She told my wife we were bringing down property values." Another cried, She had me repaint my door 3 times, yelled a third. And then David stood up, calm but firm. I've lived here for 18 years, paid taxes, paid dues, built that fence with my own hands. I thought I was part of this community. He pointed at the screen. She told me I was a disruption. Within days, several neighbors joined Miles in filing formal complaints with the State Department of Housing and Urban Affairs. He worked late into the night helping draft affidavits, collecting evidence, and cross-referencing sale records with the Lubbock developers. The state opened a formal investigation. The IRS joined for fraud, and HUD launched an inquiry into predatory real estate practices. Karen She lawyered up, but it didn't help, because now it wasn't just a flag, it was a fire. Part 4. By the time the subpoenas hit Karen's mailbox, it was too late for her to pivot, too late to delete the emails, too late to backpedal or apologize. The truth had already become its own force, and truth when backed by law doesn't knock. It breaks the door open. Karen didn't leave her house for 2 days. Her blinds stayed drawn. The little HOA compliance placard in her yard mysteriously vanished overnight. But we all knew. The neighborhood had seen the maps, the receipts, the quote about our family being a problem. She wasn't fooling anyone anymore. And the walls, they were closing in. Miles didn't celebrate. Not yet. That's never been his way. Instead, he worked the case like he'd worked his hardest prosecutions methodically, respectfully, but with relentless precision. And this time, he wasn't doing it from behind an office desk. He'd requested special designation from the State Attorney General's office to lead a joint investigation into Karen's fraudulent HOA practices and the wider gentrification scheme. They gave him the green light. Overnight, the case was escalated to the State Housing Enforcement Division. Karen Beckman, once the self-proclaimed savior of community standards, was now the central figure in a multi-agency criminal probe. The first domino fell when HUD investigators confirmed the fraudulent HOA was being used to manipulate housing values, particularly in minority households. The term they used, coercive compliance fraud. They'd seen it in pockets before in cities like Dallas, Jacksonville, Oakland, but never this organized in a suburban community. Karen's case was shaping up to be a precedent setter. Then came the money trail. Turns out, Karen wasn't just earning a stipend from the developer. Bradley Nance, she had ownership stakes in 4 LLCs tied to property flips and consulting fees. The paper trail revealed she was involved in a predatory feedback loop. Harass residents with fines and compliance notices. Push them to sell or move under duress. Buy their properties through shell buyers at suppressed values. Flip homes under community renewal initiatives. Take a cut from the profits. In one case, she had forcibly displaced a disabled Korean War veteran and his wife after threatening fines for a non-compliant wheelchair ramp. The documents showed she bought their house for $126,000 under market value and resold it for $510,000 within 3 months. When that hit the press, even her defenders shut up. Miles submitted the final Beckman dossier to the state, 218 pages of evidence, wire transfers, fraudulent mailers, photos, testimonies, the now viral video of her ripping our flag in half. But what broke the story wide open wasn't a press release. It was a live stream. One of the younger neighbors, a kid named Tasha with a growing TikTok following, showed up at a public town hall meeting with her phone live. Karen, for reasons known only to her, attended. Maybe she thought she could explain it all away. Maybe she didn't know how deep it had gone. But when she walked in, the room went cold. People stepped back. The air tightened. Miles was already there, standing at the front of the hall beside state investigators and legal counsel. Karen tried to speak first. "This has been a misunderstanding," she began, voice cracking slightly. "I only wanted to help this community thrive." Miles held up a copy of her internal compliance spreadsheet. "This," he asked, "is this your definition of help?" He tapped a line that read, "Angela Bishop, non-conforming property. Flag must be removed. Begin pressure steps." He turned to her, slow and quiet. "Pressure," the crowd murmured. Karen's jaw clenched. Then he tapped another file on the projector. This one had her digital signature authorizing a fake fine letter to a resident who had raised concerns about her harassment. Karen panicked. That was a template someone else could have edited. "Are you alleging forgery?" the investigator asked. She stammered. "I didn't mean you signed 23 of these," Miles said. "Across 15 properties, 3 of which you acquired directly through shell buyers." Gasps. "She tore down our flag," someone shouted. "She made my father cry." Another woman said, tears rising. "You made us afraid in our own homes," yelled Danny Sanders from the back. Karen turned in a full circle, eyes wide, blinking like a child in a fire. Then Miles stepped forward. "Ms. Beckman, we're serving you with the following charges as authorized by the state attorney's office and the Housing Enforcement Division." He didn't need to read them all aloud. Everyone heard the big ones: wire fraud, false personation of a legal entity, civil rights intimidation, elder abuse by coercion, conspiracy to defraud, hate-based vandalism under state law. Karen stood frozen, silent. No clipboard this time, no HOA badge, just a fraud stripped bare in public. Then the sheriff's deputies stepped forward. She didn't resist. They walked her out in cuffs, past neighbors who once feared her. No one clapped, no one cheered. Because this wasn't a movie. This was justice. And justice, real justice, comes with weight. Karen's arrest made national news that night. CNN ran the headline, "Suburban HOA Fraudster Taken Down by Black Family." She targeted son was the state attorney. Social media lit up. Civil rights groups reposted the flag video with captions like, "We are done being silent." Property law scholars hailed the case as landmark. Politicians began drafting the Homeowner Accountability Act within weeks. And here in our neighborhood, the fear lifted, the weight unclenched. We were finally free. Danny and Mark, the Sanders family, organized a neighborhood vigil. They brought candles, music, and blank flags for anyone who wanted to decorate them, symbols of culture, memory, or resistance. The walkway glowed with color and light. Cassidy, Eliza's boy, James Yoon, all the neighbors Karen had once labeled incompatible, stood together, proudly. Miles spoke last. "She wanted to erase us," he said. "She forgot we were never written in pencil." Part 5. The day Karen was sentenced, the street was quiet, not quiet with fear. Not the kind that makes blinds snap shut or conversations shrink to whispers. It was a peaceful quiet, a kind of exhale we hadn't felt in years. She got 5 years, 2 for fraud, 3 for civil rights violations, plus restitution, plus permanent disbarment from any future housing or civic administrative role. She didn't speak in court, just stood still in her tan suit like the color might make her invisible again. But there's no blending in when your name becomes a case file. State of Texas v. Karen Beckman. A name now taught in every housing law class west of the Mississippi. But while the headlines rolled, our neighborhood Hawthorne Lane started to become something entirely new. It began not with a banner or a bold mission statement. It began with a bench. A simple wooden bench that James Yoon and David built together, installed on the corner where Karen once posted her fake compliance notices. Cassidy painted it herself bright blues and golds, and a phrase that read, "Every voice belongs." And from there, everything changed. The fake HOA was officially dissolved. Of course, though legally it never existed. But the community still needed structure. So we started something different. Not a homeowners association, a neighborhood council. And this time, we did it right. Votes, transparency, rotating leadership, rules based on kindness, not control. Miles helped draft the charter, making sure no single person could ever exploit the role again. Everything had to be logged, discussed, and open to public review. Decisions had to serve everyone, not just those who fit in. We named it the Hawthorne Circle, and I was elected to the inaugural chair. I cried when they voted, not because I needed recognition, but because after everything, after the flag, the stares, the fines, the fear, they trusted me to help lead. David said it best later that night. "She tore down our flag, he whispered, and they handed you the torch. The first order of business restoring what had been erased. We commissioned local artists to repaint the community mural that Karen once had removed for being too political. It came back bigger, bolder, and this time it included faces from the neighborhood. Cassidy, James, the Nguyen family, the Sanders kids, Eliza's son, and yes, our flag, blowing high above them all. Next, we invited the families Karen had tried to drive out. The veteran who was forced to sell his kids came to the vigil. The young Latino couple she'd find over garden decorations. They returned, welcomed by name. Even Tom Darlington, the man who brought us the first envelope of evidence, helped plant a memorial tree in the park. Beneath it sits a plaque, "Truth takes root when fear is pulled out by the root." The press asked to cover our council meetings. We said no. This wasn't about spectacle anymore. It was about ownership of place, of history, of each other. But one reporter, a soft-spoken woman from Austin, came anyway, not to exploit, but to ask. She sat in the back, quiet, listening. At the end, she approached me. "I think you've started something new," she said. I laughed. "It's just a neighborhood." "No," she replied. "It's a blueprint." Miles went back to his office in Houston, but not before leading 2 workshops in other towns facing HOA abuse. His case is now cited in housing reform debates statewide. And he still calls every Sunday. We don't talk about Karen, not really. We talk about the kids, the bench. The new garden Eliza helped start with produce grown and shared by all. And sometimes, I tell him this, she thought pulling down that flag would erase something. Then I look out the window at the new mural, the families talking, Cassidy sketching from the porch. She didn't erase anything. I whisper. She made it permanent. On the anniversary of the flag incident, we held a block party. Cassidy designed the flyer. There was music, food, dancing. Someone even brought a drum circle. Flags flew from every porch: American, Pan-African, LGBTQ+, veterans banners, cultural symbols from around the world. There were no rules about what belonged, because we all belonged. When the sun set, we handed out candles, and one by one, we lined the street with light. People often ask me what changed the most. Was it the court case? The public shaming the law? I tell them this. The law stopped her, but the neighborhood, we stopped being afraid. Let them call you a disruption. Let them say your pride is too loud. Hang your flag anyway, because the world doesn't change when the quiet obey. It changes when the brave stand up and stay. The end.